Hey everyone, Mr. Happy here and welcome to my guide to the Hydaelyn encounter on the extreme difficulty. This drops an item level 580 weapon and a coffer to get a weapon of your choice, on top of the usual crafting material, song sheet, and a mount. This guide will be broken up into all the different mechanics, so use the timestamps in the description to skip around. Before pulling the boss, it helps to set up a couple of things. The 1 and 2 marker on the east and west side of the center are fairly standard for one mechanic. Split up your party into 2 light parties made up of 1 tank, 1 healer, and 2 DPS, and assign each one to one of those markers. The rest of the markers here are really just for orientation, so only use them if you want, or feel free to use other types of markers if they help. Consider setting up spread positions as well, but to be honest, most parties I'm in just wing this, sometimes more successfully than others. Oh, and don't touch the walls. Wall bad. The first phase of the encounter is very straightforward. Hydaelyn has a number of room-wide AoEs throughout the fight, starting with Herose's Radiance. Mitigate and heal up whatever room-wide AoEs I bring up, they all do identical damage. This is followed up by Shining Saber. This attack picks a party member other than the main tank and slams on them, dealing damage split between every target hit. Just stack up when you see this casting. She can only perform this in her Sword and Shield mode, which we'll get into in a little bit. The rest of the phase introduces you to key mechanics with some minor pull-to-pull variants. One of Hydaelyn's main mechanics is Crystallize. This causes her to empower her current weapon with one of 3 elements. The first one is always the water element, which, after her next attack resolves, will drop 2 split damage AoEs on both of the healers. This is what we made those light parties for. After you resolve the mechanic right after this, have Group 1 stand on the 1 marker and Group 2 on the 2 marker. The mechanic to resolve next is Hydaelyn's weapon change. Whenever Hydaelyn changes her weapon, she will perform a specific attack to follow it up. This weapon change also dictates what her next several skills will be, though this is more prevalent later in the fight. The first weapon change will be either her staff or her Chakram phase. If it's staff, she will do a point-blank AoE that you need to get away from. If it's the Chakram, it will be a donut AoE, so get inside her hitbox. Regardless of which one she does, be sure to get into your light parties for the water stacks right after. If she used her staff, her next attack will be a room-wide AoE, Magos' Radiance. If she used her Chakrams, she will instead use a tank buster, Magos' Scorn. This is damage split between the tanks, though if you stack all your cooldowns or use a tank invincibility skill, it's survivable alone. Just have the tanks each use a cooldown and stack for this to resolve it. After either of those attacks will be either Aureole or Lateral Aureole. If she uses Aureole, you'll need to dodge an AoE by standing on either of her flanks right where those arrows are on the flanks of her hitbox. If she uses a Lateral Aureole, you'll need to dodge her AoEs by standing directly in front or behind her. The safe space is super narrow, so using those arrows on her hitbox, whether it be the flank or front back, helps a ton. After Aureole, Hydaelyn will use Crystallize again, this time gaining the element of Ice. This will do an AoE on every player after the next mechanic resolves, so spread out. Before the ice attack goes off though, she will use whichever weapon change she didn't use the first time. So if she used staff first, this one would be Chakram or vice versa. Dodge the weapon change first, then spread for the ice. You have like 3 seconds to separate, so don't sweat it too much if you're kind of close to people when you're dodging them, especially the Chakram. She will then use Radiance or Scorn, depending on which phase was second, followed by another Aureole or Lateral Aureole, no real pattern there. This leads into Crystallize number 3, which can be one of 2 elements. The first possible element is water, which you already know how to deal with. The other possibility is an Earth Crystallize. This is just a large split damage AoE, so the entire party stacks up after the next mechanic. Just remember which weapon she actually used so you don't accidentally kill yourself or everyone. The final mechanic is a third weapon change, Sword and Shield. This will do a cross AoE once executed, so get to any intercardinal side from her hitbox. Just don't be directly in front, behind, or on her flanks. You can actually even hit her from max melee here if you're careful. Once this cross AoE resolves, perform whichever Crystallize she prepared, and this will be the end of phase 1. Next is her Intermission phase. You'll need to defeat 6 Crystals of Light and 2 Echoes of Hydaelyn before the gauge fills to max, or it's a wipe. The Echoes tether to the Crystals and to each other. Them tethering to each other just increases their damage output by a little bit, about 10%, nothing major. However, if an Echo is too close to a Crystal, the Crystal will take drastically reduced damage, which is problematic for the DPS check. Assign each tank to pick up an ad on the east and west side when the phase begins, and they will be responsible for moving them throughout this phase. Don't worry about DPSing them too much either. They'll actually lose health every time a crystal is defeated, so destroying those is your top priority. When the phase begins, the party will take a room-wide AoE worth of damage before 3 of those 6 crystals will actually begin to glow. This will either be the 3 north side crystals or the 3 south side crystals. These empowered crystals fill the gauge significantly faster, and thus should be your top priority to defeat. The tanks are going to want to identify which crystals are glowing and drag both of the adds to the opposite side of the room so the party can kill those first. As for the crystal kill order, it's pretty standard to start on either the northwest or southeast crystal, depending on which half of the room is lit up. Then, kill the crystals rotating clockwise, while the tanks opposite of you rotate the adds clockwise as well. There are several other effective ways to set this up, but I see this most often, so it's what I'm regurgitating to you. Just be sure to agree to whatever method you have. Nothing's more frustrating for the tanks than trying to figure out what the heck the rest of your party's trying to do as they're killing these crystals. Other than that, just kill all 6 crystals. The adds might have a little bit of health left after you kill the 6th crystal, but just finish them off. It's pretty simple. The adds themselves only auto attack, but they do hit very hard, so tanks be sure to run cooldowns here, and healers don't lose focus on their health. Once everything is defeated, just mitigate her ultimate Exodus attack and you'll be on to Phase 2. Phase 2 will be about quickly performing a few specific dodge patterns utilizing line of sight. She will start the phase with Halo to deal room-wide damage, and then she will cast Lightwave. This will summon waves along the outside of the room that slowly cross the arena, damaging any who make contact with them. They also cause an explosion when passing through a crystal. Fortunately, you can hide behind the other crystals as a line of sight method to dodge these explosions. The first light wave will summon 2 waves on the north side of the room and 4 crystals on the arena. The 2 waves will for sure hit 2 of the 3 northern crystals and eventually hit the southern one as well. Fortunately, there's one safe crystal along the north side, so that's the one we're going to go hide behind. Be sure to hide behind the crystal relative to the positions of the exploding crystals. Too many times I see people try to line of sight relative to the boss or to the center of the room, and they just get blown up. Hide from the first explosion, then shift over a bit for the second. While the wave is slowly traveling to the final south crystal, Hydaelyn will reposition herself and begin casting Indralateral Arc. This attack will fire 3 back-to-back conal AoEs, 1 at a tank, 1 at a DPS, and 1 at a healer. Before the light wave reaches the southern crystal, you should split the party into roles to hide behind each of the 3 northern crystals. It's fairly standard to let the healers hide behind whichever crystal the team used to dodge the first 2 explosions. Then the DPS take the next crystal, which is at the far north, and the tanks go to the crystal that is as far from the party as possible on the opposite side. Once everyone is in place, be sure to get on the north side of the crystal to avoid the last explosion, and stay separated from the other roles until all 3 AoEs have gone off. Once that is done, Hydaelyn will instantly perform Lightwave number 2. This will summon 5 crystals and a set of 2 waves, one from the northeast and one from the northwest, traveling directly south. One of these 2 waves is a bit faster than the other, which will determine your movement for the upcoming hiding that you need to do. Before you start hiding to avoid explosions, Hydaelyn will reposition and aim a Hero's Glory directly south. This is a giant 180-degree AoE that decimates everything in front of her, so don't go right for the crystal to start hiding or it will obliterate you. Start behind her and then wait for it to go off. Once the attack goes off, immediately identify which wave is fast and which one is slow, and get ready to do several quick movements around the crystal. You just have to dodge the wave explosions one at a time. After the second explosion, you can just cross through for the third, a quick movement optimization to help ensure you get to safety. As the 4th explosion is going off, Hydaelyn will summon another light wave, this one traveling directly through the center of the room to blow up the middle crystal. She will also teleport to one of the 4 crystals along the outer edges and aim a Hero's Glory towards the center. This just means you have to hide behind whichever crystal is behind her to avoid both the glory and the crystal explosion. Once this is all done, she will cast Halo again for room-wide damage and end Phase 2. Phase 3 will be a lot like Phase 1 with weapon changes, crystallizes, and new attacks mixed in. She will start the phase with a tank buster, Hero Sunder. This is a conal AoE as well, so the tank should just aim this away from the party. After this is Shining Saber again, followed by either a Chakram or staff weapon change. Much like before, which phase you do next is dictated by which weapon she chooses here. If she chooses staff, she will use Magos' Radiance before crystallizing her weapon with ice. She then teleports towards the north side of the room and begins casting Parhelic Circle. This attack will drop an orb at the end of all the glowing lines on the arena floor before they explode in a small AoE. Just spread as best as possible for this. Once the orbs explode, take a second to separate yourself from your allies before the ice AoEs from her Crystallize hit. Right after this is either an Aureole or lateral Aureole, so watch her cast bar and dodge accordingly, especially those who might be very far away. If she chooses Chakrams first, she'll use Magos' Scorn on the current tank before casting 3 back-to-back sets of line AoEs from the center of the room called Parhelions. Each of these lines fires a set of Chakrams towards the edge of the arena. When she eventually casts Sub-Parhelion, they will fire across the room in the same direction, hitting in an hourglass-shaped AoE. The goal here is to rotate for each Chakram set to ensure you don't get hit. At the same time, Hydaelyn will crystallize her weapon for water, so you'll also need to get into light parties. As soon as the water AoEs hit, the Chakrams begin firing, so you need a setup that's ideal for both handling the water and dodging the Chakrams. The most common way to set this up that I have seen is to actually have both light parties stand between where the first 2 Chakram sets are set to fire, with one being near and one actually being further towards the edge of the room. Once the Chakrams fire, both teams sprint and immediately rotate into where the first Chakrams fired through, about 2 of these large spike-looking patterns over. This will ensure your safety from everything. Melee, be a bit careful that you don't get clipped, as the Chakram AoEs are a bit wider than they seem here. If you're looking for a bit more DPS, consider performing a similar set of dodges, but with one of the light parties directly across from the other. This ensures that if Group 2 has a melee in it, they don't have to sacrifice any DPS just to complete the mechanic. It's uncommon to see this in the Party Finder, however, so my advice is to instead just try and ensure you have at least 2 ranged DPS in your party composition. Then make sure they're both in the second group so they can be in this ranged stack. Then for the more popular strategy, just give the 3-stack team some shields and mitigation, and let the other 5 members stay in Group 1 and just hit the boss as usual. A 3-stack of water shouldn't really be problematic. After the Chakrams go off will be another Aureole or lateral Aureole. Now after you do the first set of these mechanics, she will perform a weapon change and do the other, just like in Phase 1. After whichever weapon she does second fully resolves, she will use Sword and Shield, the Cross AoE, and end Phase 3. The final phase begins when Hydaelyn teleports to the center and casts Radiant Halo. This deals room-wide damage as per usual. She then immediately starts casting Lightwave. This will summon 4 waves, one on each side of the arena, that will slowly pass through. Their paths intersect with all but one of the intercardinal edges of the arena, so you just need to identify which edge is safe and have the party move there. Just watch for the waves that might be passing in your direction. They can sometimes get pretty close. While the waves are still passing, Hydaelyn will use Echoes, which hits the party with stack damage repeatedly that you'll need to mitigate and heal through. Near the end of the pulses, she will mark the tank with Magos' Scorn and all the other party members with a spread AoE. The tank should stay put while the party quickly spreads around the middle of the room with whatever space is available. Melees usually staying close, healers just behind the boss, and ranged DPS just getting out of the way. People really do just wing this in the Party Finder, even if you discuss spread position, so just use your best judgment here. As the spread and stack AoEs go off, 4 more waves will wash by the edges, but the middle of the room will always be completely safe, so drag Hydaelyn there. Tanks, if you can here, try to bring her all the way into the center of the room, and bonus points if you can face her north. At the very least, just center her, because that'll help with the next attack. She will now use Crystallize Water and perform Shining Saber. So the team needs to stack up for the Saber, and then break into groups for the water. Use the markers for your groups, and if you feel so inclined, mark the healers 1 and 2 for your safety. Also be sure to heal between the Saber hit and the water damage, because damage overall here is quite high. She will then use either a Chakram or Staff weapon change to dodge. Once you've dealt with the weapon change, there will be another Lightwave. This one is completely identical to the prior one, Echoes and all, so handle it the same. Just note that Echoes will hit 1 additional time, so the odds of people spreading early and dying does go up a little bit. After returning Hydaelyn to the center again, she will use Crystallize Ice and perform either Aureole or lateral Aureole. Just dodge whichever Aureole you get, and then spread for the ice damage. Then dodge whichever weapon change she didn't use the first time. Finally, Hydaelyn will use Crystallize Earth and another Aureole or lateral Aureole. Stack up and dodge the Aureole together. Finally, after the Earth damage goes out, there will be a Sword and Shield weapon change before Hydaelyn begins casting her Enrage. In total, you have about 11 minutes and 15 seconds before Hydaelyn casts this long cast Hero's Radiance and one-shots the team. And that's going to be a wrap for my guide to Hydaelyn on the extreme difficulty. Not that difficult, even though it seems a little bit chaotic. So don't worry, you'll probably be just fine in the Party Finder. Be sure to like, favorite, subscribe, and share, and I'll see you all in the next video for Endwalker. Until next time, take care.